It's Patio Side Chats with Fernando Martinez from Chaparral Pavers with tips and advice on landscaping and gardening. Here's Fernando Martinez.
Yes, indeed. I am here, and welcome. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for joining me here on the patio. Yes, I am fired up, and we got another great show for you here today. Today, I would like to talk about a pretty popular subject. Most of us have lawns, and so I wanted to talk about lawns today. You know, with all the drought and drought-tolerant shrubs, and I'm taking my lawn out, let my lawn die. There's still a lot of us who have lawns, including myself, and there's a lot to talk about when it comes to lawns and irrigation and sprinklers and nozzles and, you know, watering schedules. So I wanted to talk about how to water the lawn efficiently so that we're not wasting water, just get enough water on that lawn, but also keeping it looking green. There's a lot of pride that comes with a nice green lawn, and, you know, if you're the one that has that really nice lawn in the neighborhood, it really makes your yard stand out, and it can, you know, be gratifying. And if you happen to not be the one with the greenest lawn, I'm here to help you and get you going on that, and also saving water at the same time. It is possible to have a nice, well-watered green lawn and not waste water. So let's dive right on into it. Okay, so basically, the biggest thing is the schedule of the timer, and you do not, absolutely not need to water every single day. There will be certain times of year that, yes, I'll water every day, but it's pretty rare and not a lot. So the main thing to remember is changing the program at least 4 times a year, or having some sort of smart timer that can have a weather sensor or something adjusting it. One of the easiest ways to adjust your timer, and most of them have this, it's called seasonal adjustment, and it's a way to adjust all the stations and all the programs across the whole clock and by a percentage across the board. So if you wanted to, say, water 80% of what you're watering, it doesn't matter if it's zone 6 is at 20 minutes, zone 2 is at 8 minutes. It's going to automatically cut all those times back by 20% if you want to water 80% of what your normal watering schedule is. So what I do is I set my schedule for a summer schedule, worst case scenario, hot days, hottest day, week of the year. What would you water? Set all your times for that, and then you can back it down with that seasonal adjustment. It may be called something different on your clock, but it's basically that you back it down with a percentage, and it goes across the whole programs, A, B, C, everything. It's really, really nice, super simple, and I think just about anyone can figure out how to do that quickly. And that way, you're not thinking like, oh, I got to go out there, program the clock. I go station by station. I can't find my list of, you know, notes where the stations are. And it can be a kind of a cumbersome task, but that seasonal adjustment is really a godsend. And what I have on my clock, because it's a Hunter Pro C, I have a Hunter Solar Sync, and that is a little device you just clip to the rain gutter outside, and it adjusts that seasonal adjustment for me. So I don't even have to adjust the seasonal adjustment. It's automatically taking data from the last 3 days, calculating what it should water at. It rides around 70% on mine, I've noticed throughout the years, and it'll actually go up and increase over 100%. It'll go up to 110, 120. I think it'll go up to 150%. I've never seen it do that. I've seen it as high as 120% when it's really hot. But that just means I didn't program it right, I think, because 100% really should be my worst case scenario, which is what I was talking about. So, but it's interesting, and it's a really easy way to set the clock. So that's number one, to keep your lawn green, especially upping the water in the hot season, and knowing your lawn really well, where the dry spots are going to start and where they're going to be, where the weak spots are in your system. Every single system has weak spots. You can't get out of it. It's just the nature of sprinklers. So if you know where they are, you know kind of what time of year they appear, you can catch it ahead of time and up your clock before it happens, or, you know, get the hose out and just water those areas the hot spots or dry spots, and you won't even have to increase the sprinklers too much. Now, the types of nozzles make a big, big difference. Again, these things with technology these days, that solar sync that I'm talking about, there's other devices that are similar to it that'll do the same thing. They will make your life extremely easy, and you can be very dialed in on how much water you use with very little effort. So it could just be the difference. These clocks will work with any valves, any wire, doesn't matter the system or sprinkler heads or nozzles, whatever you have out in the field, the timer will work. So if you aren't happy with the timer you have, or that timer doesn't, you aren't able to get devices for that, change your timer. And if you can't do it yourself, have it professionally done, and set up some sort of at least a rain sensor so it'll turn it off when it's raining. That alone, if you did nothing, would save you a lot of water. So I still go a little bit farther. I check and make sure that device is working properly, and I still kind of adjust it, or I'll just use the off button, and just if I think everything looks good and wet, I'll just turn it off no matter what the solar sync's doing. So think about that. Now, the same thing with nozzles and heads now for sprinklers, they've gotten much, much easier. It used to be more difficult to set up sprinklers and to think about all the different gallons per minute and the flow rates of the pipes and all this kind of stuff. And I do want to go over that in case you have an older system, or if that's just kind of what you do and how you do it. But I want to tell you about some products that will basically make your life as easy as it is setting that clock with that solar sync, to adjust your nozzles and get the correct amount of gallons per minute covering your lawn. Because when it's always a series of small things, of small choices that you make, and putting them all together is really going to make a huge difference for your lawn. And it's going to be just one thing. I changed my clock and my lawn's still not green, or, it's all these little things, changing the clock, adding that little device, or, thinking about if there's a leak and checking it out, and catching these things ahead of time is huge in the water savings department. So it's kind of just getting out there and thinking about it. A lot of times I get asked what's the best time of day to water. Now, mornings are ideal just because the wind is kind of died down. If there's any low spots where water wants to sit, it will dry out throughout the day. If you water late in the evening and there's low spots where water wants to sit, or if you have heavy clay soils, or any areas that want to stay wet, they'll be staying wet all night long. That's the only reason why you wouldn't want to water at night, because there's no wind. Wind kind of dies down at night too, and I've watered at night. If you don't have any low spots, there's no trouble areas where water's standing, you can water at night. So, but if you're asking advice, then I would say mornings generically would be the best time to do it. I like to do it a little bit later in the morning while I'm up, and not so much when I'm asleep, 3 a.m. in the morning or something, where you never see the sprinklers coming on. So think about that, and think about the types of nozzles that you have and the heads that you have and the coverage. Make sure that no bushes are blocking the spray heads. Pretty common as bushes grow out over the lawn a little bit. You're trimming them back, keep them off the lawn, but I trim them back more for the sprinklers if it's blocking a head. Even if it seems not that big of a deal, one small leaf, touching the spray just a little bit can make a huge difference in the pattern. So think about that as well. Now let's go ahead and dive into the nozzles that I want to tell you about, and we've talked about them before. Maybe you already know about them because they've gotten a lot more popular these days. But they make it super easy to get all this gallons per minute and coverage thing figured out. So here we go. MP rotators. If you hear anything out of this show today, MP rotators, that is probably the best advice I can give you. They are a type of nozzle. They will screw in to your already spray heads. If you have the little 4-inch pop-ups and they have the little spray nozzles on there, they're fixed. You can unscrew that spray nozzle and you can screw on an MP rotator right on the top. Use the same bodies, everything. Literally, you don't have to move heads around, change anything. These heads are so forgiving, so easy to get the proper coverage. they fix a lot of problems, and they're kind of a godsend for irrigation techs and, maintenance guys and for homeowners alike. If you're doing your sprinklers yourself and you want to save some money, you can find out about these MP rotators. It's a Hunter product. I don't know why everything's Hunter. They don't support the show or anything. I do like them. I've toured their factory. It's an American company, and they make really good products. But anyway, this nozzle, it'll start out at a 90, and they're adjustable, so you can have a 90 degrees, and it spins. They're little tiny streams. They work great in wind. They're large drops. There's no mist, and they're just phenomenal. And they start out you can get one that's 90 degrees, okay, and it's going to be spinning kind of slow. And as you open it up, you can adjust it to 180. Let's say you want to go out to a half. It automatically starts putting out more water and spinning faster. And every incremental, like if you go, halfway in between the 90, because no lawn is usually square. There's a bunch of curves all the time. And it makes, putting in nozzles kind of a cumbersome, or you have to add a bunch of heads to get them to spray right because they're coming out either, all these fixed heads and you're trying to get the right arc. And so you can open them up incrementally and anywhere in between the 90 degrees all the way up past 180, actually, all the way to 210 degrees. So that's the most common nozzle that they sell is called a 90 to 210. So it'll go from 90 degrees all the way up to 210 degrees, which is beyond a half, being half a circle, 180 degrees. Hope that makes sense. And it will automatically put more water out because it knows it's covering more of an area. Absolutely incredible. If they start out at what they call 15-foot heads, which is mostly what the hold spray heads, we would put out would be 15-foot distances. Now, you don't want your heads right at 15 feet because you put them at 12 feet, so you get a little bit of overspray. You do your head-to-head coverage. If you don't know what that is, check it out. I'll just type in head-to-head on Google or whatever. You'll figure out what head-to-head coverage is. And if for some reason you measure out one of your heads is 17 feet apart, and it's like, instead of adding a new head, you can put on an MP Rotator 2000. The 15 foots are MP Rotator 1000. The MP 2000s will go up to 20 feet, and you can dial them back. You can go to 15, 17 feet with it. Somehow, I don't know how they do it, but that 2000 will automatically know that it's trying to shoot out farther, and it will dial in, and you will have the exact coverage. Whether they also make a 3000, you can put 1000s, 2000s, and 3000s all in the same valve on the same line. It's absolutely unheard of with any other type of head or nozzle, and you're going to get matched precipitation, even coverage across. I mean, it just doesn't get any easier than that. They retrofit right on the same heads that you already have. So it takes a lot of the guesswork out, takes a lot of the math out. The fact that they're putting out very low, it's like a low flow valve for your lawn, like you hear of like low flow toilet valves or, these low flow shower heads. These are the same idea. They're very low flow. And so the fact that they put out water really slow, it gives the ground time to absorb the water. So the water actually goes into the soil and doesn't run off. So they put out water really slow. The consequence of that is that they don't require a whole lot of pressure. So if you had too many heads on one valve, we can talk about pipe sizing and, optimal gallons per minute per certain size pipe. And, people run into situations where there's not enough pressure. The heads won't pop up. You switch them out to these MP rotators, and all of a sudden, what would have been maybe only 8 heads, 10 heads on one valve, you can put 15, 17 heads on that same valve, and you're still only asking for, in most cases, less gallons per minute than the 8 or 10 heads we're asking for because of that low flow aspect of them. So you can put more heads on a valve, and the coverage is even. It takes all the guesswork out of what nozzles to use. They'll go over, distances if the heads are spaced too far apart from each other. just really makes life easy. So if you combine a smart timer with some sort of weather sensor with these low flow nozzles that are self-adjusting, I mean, should be able to have a nice, deep, dark green grass with just the amount of water it takes to keep it that green and have a beautiful lawn and not spend a bunch of money. To me, I mean, that makes way more sense than everybody's got to kill their lawn. Everybody's got to let it dry out. You're only going to water 2 days a week. It just, that's really has always kind of baffled me, the whole 2 day a week thing. I can put out more water in 2 days than I would with 7 days if I watered every day with MP rotators, putting out a little amount of water and keeping the grass alive and green. So I've never understood what the days has to do with anything. They don't put an amount that you can use in those 2 days on it, the restrictions or whatever. And so I don't know. To me, I would rather see if there were going to be mandates come down that you have smart timers, low flow nozzles, and do it logically, where you're measuring the amount of water that you're putting down to keep a nice green lawn. And because what are people trying to do? The intention is to have a nice, beautiful property that's upkept and the home values are kept up in the neighborhood, and everybody's place looks nice. So that's kind of another part of the reason for this show. So we also talk about, the whole green thumb thing of having the fertilizing playing a big role as well. Just make sure you don't fertilize when you have the dry spots or when the lawn's in a stress mode. Green it up and get it back before you fertilize. But again, should be fertilizing 3-4 times a year, depending on what fertilizer. We could do a whole show on fertilizers. We have, and we will again. But just make sure that you're doing something in the fertilizing department, obviously for the grass, and maybe a little bit of weed control. And even so, I mean, kikuyu grass gets in there, crabgrass, Bermuda grass. I have it, dandelions, clover. It's all in my lawn. It's, as it gets older, you can do brand new sod and it looks great for a few years, but over time, you got to remember, we're not letting that grass come up and form the seed heads and, drop new seed and grow new grass. If you never took a lawnmower to your grass and cut the grass and you just let it grow and grow, it would form seed heads and seed would drop and it would replenish itself. Well, we always mow it, keep it nice and tight. We do it for aesthetics, of course. But those weed seeds are constantly coming in. They're constantly blowing in. Birds are dropping them in, and they're creeping in from the neighbors or whatever. And so there's this influx of weed seeds coming in and no grass seed coming in. Over time, it's going to win. But the best way to choke the weeds out is to have a thick, healthy green grass, and just the fact that it's green, thick, and healthy, it'll kind of choke out the weeds. So think about that when you're, considering how your lawn looks. Now, if you have stream rotors, they shoot out that large straight stream and they kind of move really slow. You're not going to be able to change those out to MP rotators. You could, if you wanted to change the body itself, you could get a different pop-up, put an MP rotator on there. But the stream rotors are usually used for larger lawn areas, and you got to really think about what nozzles are in there and how many gallons per minute are coming out. So if you have, say a 1 gallon per minute nozzle coming out of a 90 degree, and then you have another head that's a half, 180 degrees, you got to put a 2 gallon per minute nozzle in that one to match the 90, because the 90 degree that's in the corner there it's going to go around twice by the time the half goes around once. So you've got to be putting out twice as much water. If you had a circle out in the middle of the grass, that would have to be 4 gallons per minute to match the precipitation of the other heads. And that's where I'm talking about this MP rotator makes a lot of sense. So if you have stream rotors, you're going to have to go out there and really dive into it and check out those nozzles. I do want to talk about pressure a little bit, and dynamic pressure versus static pressure, and some pipe sizing and things on the other side of the break. So we'll be right back. And just remember, if you miss any of this radio show or you want to hear any of our radio shows, go to YouTube, We have a nice YouTube channel there, Chaparral Pavers on YouTube. Check it out. Okay, we'll see you in a minute.
You're listening to Patio Side Chats with Fernando Martinez from Chaparral Pavers on California's Central Coast. Here on 1240 AM and 99.5 FM, KSMA.
This show is brought to you by Airval Block. Concrete paving stones or pavers are not all created equal. Airval Block pavers are created from a dry mix of gravel, sand, cement, and color. With very little water used, they're super strong. They won't crack or fade. And to be an Airval Block paver, the gravel and sand come from right here on the Central Coast, supporting our local community. Airval Block is the only local manufacturer of concrete masonry products like pavers, mortarless retaining wall blocks. Airval Block products are high quality for peace of mind, and there are many colors to choose from. And if you're not sure which products you need or how to use them, you will always get expert advice from the staff at Airval Block. Products made on the Central Coast for the Central Coast. Visit their fully landscaped outdoor showroom to see the many ways you can use Airval Block products at number 1 Suburban Road in San Luis Obispo, or go online at airvalblock.com.
If you're thinking about installing a new paver patio or paver driveway, check out Chaparral Pavers online at ilovetocomehome.com. Serving the Central Coast since 2001, Chaparral Pavers will work with you to get it right and complete the job to your specifications, as customer service is king at Chaparral Pavers. Paver driveways are stylish and durable and guaranteed to never crack. If your old concrete driveway or entryway is a hazardous cracking mess, it's time to call Chaparral Pavers. Go to their website, ilovetocomehome.com. You'll find all the information you need. Check out photographs of past installations and reviews from Central Coast residents who have used Chaparral Pavers. And don't forget, all installations are guaranteed for the life of your home. So check out Chaparral Pavers online at ilovetocomehome.com. Chaparral Pavers, they'll make you love to come home. Now, back to Patio Side Chats with Fernando Martinez from Chaparral Pavers on KSMA.
And we're back. Okay, we are talking about lawns and irrigation and schedules and keeping that lawn nice and green and saving water or using the least amount of water and still keeping a nice neighborhood, keeping your property values up and keeping that lawn looking really nice, or, you know, keeping up with the neighbors, or maybe you've got the greenest lawn on the block. So we are here to help, and we're talking about MP rotators, we're talking about smart timers and, you know, smart devices that will help you adjust. Again, that seasonal adjustment on your clock, that's another really kind of a noteworthy item that we're talking about here. It makes that clock setting really easy. The MP rotators make it super simple to adjust lawn heads and things. The only thing I will say about them is there is that adjustment ring on there, and they do like a double pop. So the head will pop up, and usually make sure you got 4-inch pop-ups. I mean, that pretty much everyone does anymore these days. It used to be 2-inch. Anything less than 4, the grass kind of can get in the way, but 4-inch pop-ups, and then the nozzle itself will pop. So it gets like a double pop, and little tiny grains of sand can get stuck in there. But if you just turn that ring back and forth, it kind of shoots them out and it starts spraying right again. But even if they break, you get another one and just, you know, screw it on there. So they're very easy to work on, super simple. So what I did want to talk about, though, as promised, was pressure. And if you're installing a new sprinkler system, or if you're adding on a section of sprinklers, or if you're having issues with them popping up all the way, or if something doesn't look right, you need to check the pressure. That's actually pretty simple as well. So it can sound kind of intimidating, but it's really not. You just get, and you can get it at any of the box stores or the hardware store or whatever, just a little, gauge, and it hooks up to a fitting that would go on the hose bib. And what you can do is screw it into the hose bib. You turn it usually has a valve on there so that you can test dynamic versus static pressure. Now, what is the difference? Static pressure is the pressure when everything's off. So if I have all the valves off, I hook my gauge to the hose bib, I turn the hose bib on, but no water's coming out, it's measuring the static pressure. So it could be, if it's after the regulator, it's usually 60 pounds, 60 PSI. I've seen it before the regulator, just what's coming in from the street. You can see what the your municipality is giving you pressure-wise before it hits your pressure regulator to going into your house. I've seen it 90. I've seen as high as 110 PSI. So, decide what kind of valves you're putting and know what kind of pressure they're going to have to be dealing with. The whole reason they put a pressure regulator on a house is so if it is 90, 100 PSI that, when your dishwasher turns on, it doesn't smack that valve, or, all your pipes up, in the house as you turn water on and off, it can be hard on them, and you can get what's called water hammer. But if you put a pressure regulator on, you can get that to regulate down. And I have mine set at my house at 60 PSI so that, it's kind of easy on those valves. Your heads out in the field are going to want, different dynamic pressure. So dynamic pressure is measuring the pressure while the sprinklers are on and water's flowing. So you can open up that valve. There's a way to test it with that gauge. And if you open it up, it'll tell you, mine has 2 gauges on it. It tells me what the gallons per minute is flowing through there and what the pressure is while it's on. And there, you can get a adapter that will adapt to a sprinkler nozzle, and you can put it on, and then you can screw the nozzle on top of that, and then you'll have a gauge in between the riser and the nozzle, and then you turn the sprinklers on, and that gauge will show you what pressure that your sprinklers are running at while they're running, and that's called dynamic pressure. That's what actually really matters, and that will tell you whether all your pipe sizing was correct and that everything should be working correctly, and then maybe you've got a different problem other than pressure. But that's the way you find out what dynamic pressure you have at the head. Okay, well, we're out of time. We might have to do a part 2 on this subject, but anyway, I hope that helps. I wish you the best of luck with your lawn out there. Catch us on YouTube, Chaparral Pavers. You can get all the radio shows there, and of course at ILoveToComeHome.com. We'll see you next week.
This has been Patio Side Chats with Fernando Martinez from Chaparral Pavers. Go to ILoveToComeHome.com to find out more, or call 805-588-6917. And be sure and tune in next week at this same time for Patio Side Chats here on KSMA.